2,000 years ago, engineers with no calculus, no computers, and no electricity could move water uphill. Yet one of their systems still feeds a fountain in Rome today. This might be the most efficient water technology ever invented, and it was buried, not by time, but by industries that profit when you pay for power. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how they did it and how you can build one yourself. Hi, I am Greg, and welcome to Building Grounds. Subscribe and hit the bell for more uncovering of building secrets they never taught you. The modern world runs on one assumption. If you want water to travel uphill, you need to pump it. We spend billions of dollars annually powering pumps that push water where gravity supposedly cannot take it. And yet in the ruins of the Roman Empire, we find physical proof that this is wrong. The Aqua Claudia delivered water to Rome from springs 50 miles away. The Aqua Marcia crossed valleys that dropped hundreds of feet, then rose again. The combined aqueduct system, serving ancient Rome, moved over 1 million cubic meters of water every single day by the 4th century. All of it was powered by absolutely nothing. How did engineers working with bronze tools achieve something we now assume requires diesel generators and electric motors? The answer has been sitting in physics textbooks for centuries, hiding in plain sight. Every student learns about communicating vessels in basic physics. Take two containers and connect them with a tube at the bottom. Fill one with water. The water flows through the tube until both containers reach the same level. It does not matter if the tube between them dips down into a valley. The water will always seek equilibrium at the same height on both sides. This is not magic. This is pressure. The weight of water on one side pushes through the connecting tube until the weight on both sides balances. Roman engineers understood this principle 1,700 years before Blaise Pascal formalized it, and they scaled it up to move rivers across mountains. The technical name is the inverted siphon. Unlike a regular siphon that pulls liquid over a hump, the inverted siphon takes water down into a valley and pushes it back up using nothing but the pressure created by the water entering the system. Picture this. A spring emerges from a hillside at 1,000 feet elevation. The city that needs the water sits 3 miles away at 980 feet elevation, but between them lies a valley that drops to 850 feet. The obvious solution is to build a bridge or elevated channel across the valley. The Pont du Gard in France stands as the most famous example, but bridges are expensive and can only span limited distances. When a valley stretched too far, Roman engineers turned to the inverted siphon. At Aspendos, in what is now Turkey, Roman engineers faced exactly this problem. Their water source sat on one side of a valley and the city sat on the other. The valley dropped nearly 50 feet below the level of both, so they built a sealed pipeline. The Aspendos siphon stretched 1,670 meters across the valley floor. Water entered from a header tank, dropped down through stone pressure towers, descended to the valley floor, rose back up through more pressure towers, and emerged at the city only slightly lower than where it began. At the bottom of the siphon, the pressure inside those pipes reached 180 pounds per square inch. That is more pressure than a modern fire hose. And that pressure pushed the water back up the other side. No pumps, no external power source, just physics. But knowing the physics is one thing. Actually building a pipe that could handle 180 pounds per square inch 2,000 years ago requires engineering that we have only recently matched. The Romans built their high-pressure water pipes from lead. This immediately raises a red flag. We know lead is toxic. How could Roman lead pipes possibly be safe? The Roman water commissioner Sextus Julius Frontinus described a deliberate practice of allowing calcium carbonate to build up inside the pipes. This mineral deposit, called sinter, forms naturally when hard water flows through any channel. The Romans encouraged it. Archaeological analysis of excavated Roman pipes reveals interior coatings of sinter 3 to 5 millimeters thick. This layer completely sealed the lead from the water. The water never touched the lead, but the lead pipes were only part of the system. The real engineering genius appeared in the pressure management infrastructure. At Aspendos, the Romans built stone towers every 30 meters along the siphon route. These towers allowed air to escape from the system, provided access points for maintenance, and most importantly, broke the pressure into manageable sections. Each tower created a new starting point for the pressure calculation. This allowed the Romans to use pipes rated for lower pressures through most of the system. The precision required for this work still impresses modern engineers. Using simple surveying tools, Roman surveyors achieved gradients of 0.1%. They maintained this precision over routes stretching 50 kilometers or more. At Pergamon, the Romans built a siphon that descended 190 meters into a valley. The pressure at the bottom exceeded 170 pounds per square inch. The pipes were engineered with walls up to 15 millimeters thick, backed by a waterproof concrete called opus signinum that actually grew stronger when exposed to moisture. Some Roman aqueducts still carry water today. The Aqua Virgo, built in 19 BC, continues to supply the Trevi fountain in Rome. Over 2,000 years of continuous operation. Which raises an uncomfortable question: why did we forget any of this? The collapse of the Western Roman Empire did not destroy the aqueducts. What collapsed was the administrative and economic system that maintained the infrastructure. Aqueducts require constant attention. When the tax revenue that funded maintenance workers disappeared, so did the maintenance. By 800 AD, the great cities of Europe had reverted to wells and river water. The sophisticated gravity-fed systems became archaeological curiosities. The knowledge itself was not entirely lost. Texts by Frontinus and Vitruvius survived in monastery libraries, but knowing that something existed is not the same as knowing how to build it. When the last Roman-trained engineers died, the hands-on knowledge died with them. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and with it a completely different approach to moving water. James Watt patented his improved steam engine in 1769. Within decades, steam-powered pumps were draining mines and pressurizing urban distribution systems. The technology was revolutionary. It was also profitable. A gravity-fed inverted siphon, once built, requires nothing. No fuel, no operators, no replacement parts. From an engineering perspective, this is elegant and efficient. From a business perspective, this is terrible. Steam pumps required coal. Pump stations required operators. The industrial economy rewarded systems that generated ongoing economic activity, not systems that solved problems once and ran forever. Engineering education developed within this industrial context. By the 20th century, most civil engineers had never designed an inverted siphon. The irony is that we still use them. We just pretend they are modern inventions. When William Mulholland designed the Los Angeles Aqueduct in 1913, he included multiple inverted siphons. His engineers consulted Roman sources. But the press coverage focused on the modern achievement, not the ancient precedent. Today, Denver Water operates over 30 inverted siphons. The Colorado River Aqueduct uses them extensively. Agricultural irrigation systems in California's Central Valley use the same principle that served Aspendos 2,000 years ago. A properly designed gravity siphon can recover up to 95% of the entry elevation. Modern high-density polyethylene pipe handles even higher pressures than Roman lead. Operating costs are zero. So why is everyone not using this? First, the upfront installation requires significant investment. Many projects choose pumps because pumps are familiar. Second, gravity systems generate no ongoing revenue for anyone. The economic incentives actively discourage the most efficient solution. Third, the knowledge is not distributed. It is not in the standard curriculum. The knowledge was never truly lost. It was devalued, deemed obsolete by an industrial system that measured progress in horsepower rather than efficiency. But the physics has not changed. Water still seeks its level. In developing regions, engineers are rediscovering gravity-fed systems. Villages in Nepal and Peru receive clean water through pipelines that would look familiar to Frontinus. No electricity required. You now understand something that most trained engineers never learned. A principle so simple, it seems like a trick, yet so powerful it supplied the greatest city of the ancient world. The blueprints exist, the physics works. Water does not care about our economic systems or our assumptions about what requires power. Water just follows pressure to equilibrium. The Romans built an empire on that simple truth. Roman inverted siphons were engineering solutions used when aqueducts needed to cross valleys too deep for conventional bridges. The system works by allowing water to descend through sealed pipes and rise again on the other side, using the principle that water seeks its own level. Begin by conducting a thorough topographical survey. Roman engineers used the groma to establish right angles and straight lines, and the chorobates as a leveling device with plumb lines and a water channel. Determine the precise elevation of entry and exit points, ensuring the exit is slightly lower to maintain flow despite friction losses. Calculate the head pressure at the lowest point, as this determines structural requirements. At the point where the gravity flow channel meets the descent, construct a header tank called a castellum from opus caementicium, volcanic ash, lime, and aggregate. Line it with opus signinum waterproof plaster made from crushed terracotta and lime. Include a settling basin and install grates to filter debris. Roman siphons typically used multiple parallel pipes rather than a single large conduit, reducing the wall thickness needed. Fabricate pipes from lead sheets or carved stone sections with joints sealed using lime mortar and linen gaskets soaked in oil. Lay multiple pipes in a prepared trench, bedding them in compacted earth or on masonry supports at regular intervals. At the valley floor, construct a low bridge called a venter using Roman arch construction. Erect wooden centering, lay voussoirs that meet at the keystone, and then remove the centering once the mortar cures. Anchor the pipes firmly using lead-sealed iron clamps. Continue the pipe array up the far side. Maintain a continuous gradient to avoid air pockets. Support the pipes on a masonry substructure called a substructio. Ensure all joints face upstream so water pressure pushes against the socket. At the top of the ascending section, build a second castellum to transition back to open gravity flow. Include an overflow channel for high flow periods and install inspection ports along the route. Before putting the system into service, inspect every joint. Gradually fill the system, allowing water to push air out through vents at high points. Monitor for leaks. Once the system holds pressure, open the intake fully and verify the flow rate at the receiving tank. If this changed how you think about construction, subscribe to Building Grounds with Greg. Please watch the next video appearing on your screen right now.